All right, today we are venturing into totally uncharted territory when it comes to human consciousness. We're unpacking the mind-bending, first-hand account of a man who did something almost unthinkable. He became only the 41st person in the entire world to undergo a continuous intravenous DMT trip that lasted for 5 hours. Okay, let's dive into this because to really wrap our heads around how insane this is, we have to look at the numbers. Normally, a standard DMT experience lasts what, maybe 8 minutes? Just 8 minutes. But this experiment, it was specifically engineered to keep him there for 5 continuous hours. So you gotta ask yourself, why? Why would someone voluntarily submit to 5 hours in that intense of a space? Well, it takes a really specific, honestly pretty desperate motivation. And that motivation basically boils down to this staggering number right here, 38%. See, this subject had just gotten a completely devastating brain scan back. It showed that 38% of his brain, almost 4/10 of it, just wasn't working anymore. Toss a very serious heart condition on top of that, and just getting through normal daily life was becoming almost impossible. So he wasn't doing this for fun, right? This wasn't a recreational escape. He was on a literal do-or-die mission to trigger neuroplasticity. He desperately needed his brain to physically rebuild itself. To make that happen, he was targeting a very specific biological chemical called BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as basically Miracle-Gro for the brain. It's the chemical that kicks off the creation of brand new, healthy baby neurons. And about 95% of those form right in the hippocampus, which is the brain's control center for learning and memory. So the whole biological endgame of this incredibly grueling 5-hour ordeal was to just flood his brain with BDNF and force it into a state of extreme neurogenesis.
And that massive spike in neurogenesis drives the ultimate goal here, synaptic plasticity. This is a specific kind of neuroplasticity that enables something called long-term potentiation, or LTP. A really great way to think about it is, it's like neurons getting a divorce from their old broken pathways and remarrying to form brand new ones. The brain is literally rerouting itself. It's physically building fresh, healthy communication lines to bypass that 38% dead zone. It's literal structural engineering, but happening entirely inside a living human skull.
Now, what's incredibly fascinating is the actual earthly reality of how you even set something like this up. Because this didn't happen in some sterile, bright white hospital room. It went down in a really beautiful, carefully prepared space in a home in Denver. The medicine itself was whipped up by an expert genetic scientist and kept safe in a heavy-duty Pelican box inside a freezer. But the most crucial detail actually happened the night before. His wife went into the kitchen, picked out the specific vials they were going to use, and completely in secret, she prayed over them. Her prayer was very specific. She told the medicine to immediately fix his heart and then his head. Keep that in the back of your mind because it is absolutely pivotal later. So keeping a human being in a DMT state for 5 straight hours takes some serious medical mechanics. Traditional methods just won't cut it. They actually used a highly sophisticated anesthesiology delivery system. Picture a massive syringe full of DMT hooked up to a machine that constantly pumps it into the bloodstream at a highly specific milliliter per minute rate. The facilitators literally had an altitude dial right there in the room. If they wanted to shoot him deeper into the trip, they just cranked the dial up for a boost. And amazingly, if you needed a break, like say to get up and use the bathroom mid-trip, they could literally dial the machine back down, let him briefly return to Earth, and then launch him right back out. Crazy, right? Because they were controlling that altitude dial, his launch into the trip was immediate and incredibly forceful. Usually people who use DMT report spending some time in a transitional space they call the waiting room before they actually break through to the main realm. But our guy, he completely bypassed that. Because the machine was pumping the medicine at such a high rate right from the jump, he spent maybe 3 milliseconds in that waiting room before he was instantaneously ripped out of our reality and shot straight into hyperspace. And when he arrived in hyperspace, he definitely wasn't alone. Here's a wild number to chew on. For 4,500 years, humans doing DMT have consistently reported encountering the exact same bizarre, alien-like entities made of light. It doesn't matter what era or what culture they're from, people see these exact same beings without exception. And the second our subject broke through, those exact historic entities were right there waiting for him. And guys, they immediately got to work. What unfolded next was a visceral 5-hour-long hyperspace surgery. The entities forcefully laid him down on what felt exactly like a cold, stainless steel medical table. He reported actually feeling them cut his body completely open, going straight from his pelvis all the way up to his neck with these massive shears. Then, one of the entities physically held his forehead down and shoved an ice-cold drill bit deep up his nose until he felt it literally bump against the back of his skull. He was fully conscious in his own subjective perspective the whole time, watching this happen, hearing his own organs sloshing around, and feeling every single physical manipulation going on inside his head. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate paradox of the DMT realm. The physical sensations he's describing, massive shears, ice-cold drills, being pinned down to a steel table, I mean, that sounds like pure horror, right? Yet, his emotional reality was completely inverted. He felt absolutely zero physical pain. And even more surprisingly, zero fear. The entire atmosphere of this alien surgery was just completely saturated in unlimited love, total peace, and complete non-judgment. Everything, no matter how physically terrifying it sounds to us here on Earth, felt perfectly, wonderfully okay. Then, you have to factor in the staggering time dilation. Time is completely relative in that space. While the facilitators back in Denver were sitting by his side for exactly 5 hours of linear Earth time, his subjective experience was vastly, vastly different. In the DMT world, he lived through an experience that felt like it lasted a full 5 to 6 months. He was observing events, talking to creatures, and just existing in this alternate dimension for half a year in his own mind. Now, as you can probably imagine, getting ripped away from a 6-month, totally pain-free existence of unlimited love is not easy. When those facilitators finally began dialing down the machine to bring him back, the emotional toll was agonizing. As he was coming to, he asked out loud 39 separate times, "Am I dead?" He had completely lost the concept of even having a physical body. His unwillingness to return to Earth was monumental. He was sobbing intensely, totally overwhelmed by the harshness of having to come back, while the amazing facilitators just sat there with him, literally wiping the tears and snot off his face. The immediate aftermath of this was a really heavy, crushing depression. He started experiencing what he called the tragedy of returning. Coming back from a realm of pure, abundant love, he suddenly felt like human existence was so harsh, so cartoonish, and so two-dimensional, like an oil painting. He realized that to simply survive on this planet, a human being literally has to develop a layer of narcissism. You have to build up an ego just to endure the daily grind of Earth. And losing that perfect, beautiful connection to hyperspace, it was absolutely devastating to him. He actually compared the whole experience to waking up in the Truman Show or taking off a VR helmet. Imagine you've been wearing a virtual reality headset your entire life, and you're stuck playing this really restrictive, totally limited video game. Then, suddenly, someone pulls the helmet off. You see actual reality for the first time, a place of total peace and abundance that feels 1,000 times more real than anything you've ever known. The true heartbreak of coming down from DMT is the realization that these beings are forcing you to put that VR helmet right back on. You don't have a choice, you have to return to the video game. But here is where this entire journey comes full circle, and it is honestly nothing short of astounding. Remember his wife's secret prayer in the kitchen the night before? How she asked the medicine to fix his heart and then his head? Well, upon returning to Earth and integrating back into his normal life, the medical aftermath was undeniable. Since undergoing that 5-hour hyperspace surgery, he has had absolutely zero problems with his heart and zero problems with his formerly 38% damaged brain. The entities went straight to work on exactly what was prayed for, and the biological healing was a complete, absolute success. Which leaves us looking out at the absolute frontier of human consciousness. If these hyperspace dimensions truly feel 1,000 times more real than our own universe, well, what comes next? Scientists like Andrew Gallimore are currently researching exactly that. They're actually looking into mixing high doses of Alzheimer's drugs with these continuous DMT drips to help users retain their memories. The idea is that they could bring back larger chunks of data and actually begin to map hyperspace. It really begs the ultimate question. If a 5-hour trip can physically cure a failing human brain, what unbelievable secrets of the universe are we just milliseconds away from unlocking? Definitely something to think about the next time you assume this reality is the only one there is.